when there was no road to Buffalo Narrows, they went up on the river to get there. Wanda was going to come with me this week, but our plans changed a few times, and she stayed home because I'm not going home. I'm going to meet the Tribal Trails crew in Winnipeg in a couple days, and we're doing some recording for Tribal Trails interviews over the next few days there. So that's the bird's eye view on where we're at. I was going to share just a few things, a little bit about the ministry of Tribal Trails, and a little bit from Ezekiel 36. And this t-shirt is my illustration. We had a lot of these t-shirts out, and what is the purpose of that? And it kind of relates to what is the purpose of Tribal Trails. We have these things out so that people will watch Tribal Trails more, or they'll check out our YouTube channel or Facebook, or find us on Roku, or send in more money. I like to look at the back of the shirt to get maybe a better picture of the purpose. I'm going to put a book here to hold it down so you can see it. The purpose of Tribal Trails is more in this thing that's on the back. Real people, real life, real hope. Real people sharing the hope of Jesus Christ is our purpose. That's sharing on television, but even in our day-to-day lives. And I want to just convey that to all of us, that's the purpose that God has given us, is to be real people sharing our real life with neighbors, with people around us, the hope that Jesus Christ has given us. And we don't share it the same way as someone else because our life is different than somebody else. So we're sharing a different life. We're sharing different things that God has done. But that's the purpose of Tribal Trails. And we've done not just a television program. This is a book that we started printing about 3 years ago. We've sent out about 40,000 of these books free of charge. I'm a terrible salesman. So we just send them out free of charge and distribute them all over the place. There's a green one and a brown one, 10 different stories and of different life stories of guests of Tribal Trails. And we made more for maybe someone that would not accept the Bible. We still view the Bible as the most important book that ever was and is. But a lot of people won't accept the Bible. But they might accept some testimonies of First Nations people whose life God has changed. And everyone is different. So someone might be impacted by one or a different one. There's another guy, Dwayne Flamond. He lives up in the Roblin area, and he was a guest on Tribal Trails. After that time, the Lord opened a lot of doors for him to share in churches. He shared in correctionals. He shared in the Prince Albert Penitentiary. Just a lot of ministry that's opened up for Dwayne, and his church in Roblin has backed him and enabled him to minister. This is another one that we printed called Maskipiton. It's a true life history from a couple hundred years ago of a chief. He used to be quite a warrior, and then the Lord got a hold of his heart, and he changed. He became known as the Peace Chief. So these are things that enable someone to, just a tool to get into somebody's life. One church took 3,000 of these about a week or two ago and put a float in the parade in Prince Albert, because they said there's a lot of First Nations people that will be watching on the streets, and we want First Nations material. So we gave them 3,000 of these. They passed them out just to get into homes. Acts chapter 17, Paul said this, "And God made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined the times and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each one of us." God has put that says God has put each one of us in 2026, in this time, and in this place, in Esterhazy. For me, it's in Prince Albert. For you, it's in Esterhazy. But he's done that for a reason, so that people would seek after him. So we would, but then also people around us would seek after him and perhaps find their way toward him. So God has given us our place. God has given us the year 2026. I'm actually glad for that. I wouldn't stay alive very long if I didn't have the comforts of a thermostat that keeps me warm and things like that. I would die outside if I was living outside. Yeah. But so I'm glad I'm in 2026. I'm glad I'm in this place, in this time. But God has put us here. He's given us the possessions that we have. He's given us the life that we have, so that we can give it back to him. And David said something that I find very interesting in 1 Chronicles 29. He was talking about he had provided lots of gold and lots of timbers for the temple. And after that time, he was talking to the Lord, and he said, "But who am I, and what is my people, that we should thus be able to offer willingly? For all things come from you, and of your own have we given you." So that applies to all the gold and the timbers that David had gotten ready for the temple, but it also applies to our emotional traits, the family that God has given to us, our character, our intellect. These are things that God has given us, and he's given us and so that we can serve him, so we can give them back to God. And if we think, when we give these back to God, have we really given him anything? Well, not really, because they were his in the first place. And that's what David is saying. All these things that I give you, they were yours first. I grew up, where God raised me was actually right in this church. I remember being here as about that high. I have very few memories from my childhood years. I got knocked out too many times, but I have one. This place was in construction, and I remember they had pop. That's not very spiritual, but it probably means that I never got that at home. But this is where I was raised, and the things that impacted me as I was growing up, the youth group was one of them, a huge impact. Just walking alongside, I had lots of struggles as a youth. I even accepted the Lord several times. Some say you only need to do that once. I did it several times because I never knew if I was really saved. This was a struggle that I had. And the youth group and the church were something that helped me walk through those times and keep following the Lord. Mom would invite families over every Sunday. So the families coming over was a huge part of our lives. So I look at this church as being a huge part of my faith, the reason why I'm walking with the Lord now. And one of the things, after we moved away, we live up in Prince Albert, 5 hours north of here. One of the things that we've gotten involved in is Pine Ridge Bible Camp as a family. And I noticed, I picked up this one from the back, Good Spirit Bible Camp. So that's when I was little, as a kid growing up, I was at Good Spirit Bible Camp. And then as a teen, I was helping out as cabin leader or causing trouble or something. But I was helping out there in parts. So I value camps and the impact that can have on your lives. And we got involved in Pine Ridge Bible Camp, which is from Prince Albert, another 4 hours north from there. I'm pointing the wrong way. North? North. Okay. Sorry. 4 hours more north from Prince Albert. Wanda and I got involved, everything from helping in the kitchen and maintenance to speaking in the chapel sessions. But our kids, their goal, tagging along behind us, was to get to be old enough so that they could help in the kitchen and so that they could, the guys, so that they could clean the outhouses. Imagine that. They wouldn't clean toilets at home, but up at camp, their goal was to get to be old enough to help out. And then it grew so where they would come and help out when we weren't even there. They would spend the whole summer up at camp. And a number of them have spent time as camp staff. Arana, our son, is full-time at Pine Ridge Bible Camp right now. Last week, I was reading an old email that we sent to a church with a prayer request, and I want to read that one to you. It's about Pine Ridge Bible Camp. It says, "Continue to pray earnestly for the children and the young people who attended camp this summer. Many are facing huge challenges physically, emotionally, and spiritually where they live. Sadly, many of them are not safe in their own homes. Pray for those who have come to know the Lord, to find healing, to grow, to be a light for the Lord, even if it costs them. They are crying out for someone to come teach them and encourage them in their villages. Pray the Lord of the harvest to send his servants to them. Pray for Angel, one of these young ladies. She has gone through so much in her young life. Pray for her as she interns at Pine Ridge Bible Camp, a safe place for her. She has a hunger for God and his word. She needs teaching and healing from her wounds, and to learn what real love is, to find it in God. Pray for the staff as they reach out to her. Pray for wisdom and love. Pray for Tabitha as she gives direction there. For wisdom to reach out to Angel and other ladies who drop in at the camp." That was, I'm not sure how many years ago, but one of the ways that the Lord answered that prayer, this girl Angel is now married to our son Shema. And we love taking care of their little girl Carolyn. We're looking forward to, in addition to their family, another little one coming out into the open air in December sometime. But Shema and Angel now, they live as a light and a testimony in the community where they're living, up at also at Pine Ridge Bible Camp. This summer they took 2 weeks off from trucking to volunteer at the camp, and they were both program directing for 2 weeks there. And they're quite a light and a testimony just among her own people as well. Ron is the one, our son that I mentioned, that's up at the camp full-time now. He's getting a little bit of a break from camp just finished last weekend, I believe. And he's trying to sleep an awful lot. So our other son, Noah, he took his 2.5-year-old son, Elias, and 2 child evangelism fellowship workers up to northern Alberta, a fly-in community. So Noah was the pilot. He flew them in, and then they worked together running kids clubs up there in an area where CEF hardly has a chance to get. So that's how they're working together with CEF last year and this year. So our kids have been an enormous, I'll call them a joy and a benefit just to see them get involved in walking with the Lord and serving the Lord. But kids is not the only blessing that we have and the only way we have of serving. Edith is a lady that's come from down southern Saskatchewan and Alberta, I guess. She came up to NCM for the whole summer, and she's been helping out in the office, doing things like opening mail and just a lot of odds and ends jobs. Been very helpful all of last summer and this summer as well. So God has given her the ability and the joy of just doing some of these odd jobs. So this morning I want to look at Ezekiel 36, and to me it gives an interesting view of why does God work through us? What's his desire, his reasoning? So we'll look at Ezekiel chapter 36, starting at verse 6. And this is coming at a time when Israel has been kind of kicked out from their land. Ezekiel is writing from the land of captivity, and he's writing and telling them things that are going to come and things that are happening, and giving them some perspective. And this is written specifically about Israel and the time that they're going through, but we can learn from it in our time. I'm not going to pretend that it's written to Brent and to Esterhazy Baptist Church, but we can still apply it as we learn from it. And finding out, what do we do when we get kicked out? Maybe you sometimes feel like you get kicked out of a relationship with God. It's broken, it's busted. And how do you deal with that? So that's what Israel was going through. Chapter 36 of Ezekiel, verse 6. Therefore, prophesy concerning the land of Israel, and say to the mountains of Israel, the ravines and the valleys, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Look, I have spoken in my zeal, in my anger, because you have endured the insults of the nations. So this is what the sovereign Lord says. I vow that the nations around you will endure insults as well. But you, mountains of Israel, will grow your branches and bear your fruit for my people Israel, for they will arrive soon. For indeed, I am on your side. I will turn to you, and you will be plowed and planted. I will multiply your people, the whole house of Israel, all of it. The cities will be populated and the ruins rebuilt. I will increase the number of people and the animals on you. They will increase and be fruitful. I will cause you to be inhabited, as in ancient times, and will do more good for you than at the beginning of your history. Then you will know that I am the Lord. Now, the time of them coming back, I believe the first time after this is written would be Ezra and Nehemiah's time, when people brought back to Israel. So it's a picture of when they were brought back and what God is going to do. Could also say it's a picture of today, when Israel is being brought back. The people of Israel are being brought back to Israel. So it happened back then during Ezra and Nehemiah's time. It's happening again now. As I mentioned, we can take it as a picture of our own lives. How can we, when we feel busted or separated from God, how can we look at being brought back to God as well? In verse 12, I will lead people, my people Israel, across you. They will possess you, and you will become their inheritance. No longer will you bereave them of their children. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Because they are saying to you, you are a devourer of men, and bereave your nation of children. Therefore, you will no longer devour people, and no longer bereave your nation of children, declares the sovereign Lord. I will no longer subject you to the nation's insults. No longer will you bear the shame of the peoples. No longer will you bereave your nation, declares the Lord, the sovereign Lord. And the Lord's message came to me, Son of man, when the house of Israel was living in their own land, they defiled it by their behavior and their deeds. In my sight, their behavior was like the uncleanness of a woman having her monthly period. So I poured my anger on them because of the blood they shed on the land and because of the idols with which they defiled it. And this is, again, a picture of they're separated. They're kicked out because of things that they had done. It wasn't just a chance thing. It was because of what they had done. And now there's a separation between them and God. Sometimes we feel separated, and maybe there's something that we have done that's caused the separation. And we ask, how can we be reunited? Let's go on with verse 19. I scattered them across the nations. They were dispersed throughout the foreign countries. In accordance with their behavior and their deeds, I judged them. But when they arrived in the nations where they went, they profaned my holy name. It was said of them, these are the people of the Lord, yet they have departed from his land. I was concerned for my holy reputation, which the house of Israel profaned among the nations where they went. Therefore, say to the house of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord says. It is not for your sake that I am about to act, O house of Israel, but for the sake of my holy reputation, which you profaned among the nations where you went. I will magnify my great name that has been profaned among the nations, which you have profaned among them. The nations will know that I am the Lord, declares the sovereign Lord, when I magnify myself among you in their sight. And when I think back of Even things like eternal security. When I mentioned I got saved many times as a kid, and even as an adult. When I went through some of those times, I read this verse, "It is not for your sake that I'm about to act, O house of Israel, but for the sake of my holy reputation, which you profaned." You often think, and I've heard this even with Israel today, how can the Lord bless Israel? They're not Christians, so the Lord can't bless them. That was the same situation they were in back here. The Lord kicked them out from the land. He disciplined them. They knew they were separated from God. Did they turn their lives around and repent? No, they didn't. It said they kept on. They profaned his holy name. Even after they got kicked out, they profaned his holy name. Wherever they went, they were a disgrace to God, and they gave him a bad name. And that's when the Lord restored them. Isn't that backwards? Isn't that God should wait until they turn around, get their act together, then he can restore them. But I'm so grateful for that very thing, because my life doesn't depend on me being right with God before he starts to work in my life. My life doesn't, God's not up there saying, well, let me know when you got it together, and then I'll come and I'll help you out. Eternal security is not about me. And that's what I learned when I, even as an adult, working through some of those issues of, am I really saved? Am I really right with God? It came to this same thing. It's not about me. It's about who God is. It's not about how much faith do I have. Faith is important. John 3:16 and so many other verses talk about our faith and believing. But it's not about how strong is my faith. It's about God's faithfulness. How faithful is God? Ezekiel is, the very word that Ezekiel comes from is the strength of God, and God will strengthen. So are we good enough to serve God by our own selves? We want to follow him. We want to participate in God's, the things that he's doing. We want to be a part of that. But the importance of realizing it's God that works, God that strengthens, even when we blow it. There's a verse in Romans 5 that says, "For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is, in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep doing." That's what Paul said. There's a saying, not sure for sure where it comes from. It might be an English martyr named John Bradford, as he was watching prisoners being led off to be executed. He said, "There, but for the grace of God, go I." And that's a strange thing to say when you see someone that's really bad in front of you. Now, to put it in our context, if we're watching someone get sentenced and go to jail for something really bad, like child sexual abuse, and there they are heading off to jail, would we be able to say, "There, but for the grace of God, go I"? Or is it more like, I'd never do that. So that was quite the statement from, if it's John Bradford or wherever it comes from, "There, but for the grace of God, go I." Someone described the difference between David and Saul. And both of them were sinners. Both of them failed God. Saul did something fairly small. He sacrificed. He did the sacrifices to the Lord instead of waiting for Samuel to come. So he led a time of worship instead of waiting for the guy that was supposed to come. That was his sin. And David, he slept with somebody else's wife. And then he had that guy killed. When you weigh those two, it's not who did the worst sin, but David's response was to acknowledge his sin and to repent from his sin. And he was called a man after God's own heart, and Saul was kicked out from relationship with the Lord. There's a verse in Ezekiel, well, we'll read 31 and 32 first from Ezekiel 36. It says, "Then you will remember your evil behavior and your deeds that were not good." This is after the time that the Lord works. "Then you will remember your evil behavior and your deeds that were not good. You will loathe yourself on account of your sins and your abominable deeds. Understand that it is not for your sake that I am about to act, declares the sovereign Lord. Be ashamed and embarrassed by your behavior, O house of Israel." There's a verse in Ezekiel 43 I'll just mention. And this is, Ezekiel has just, in 7 chapters later, in 43, he describes the temple that's going to come. Beautiful place, lots of gold, lots of majesty, and you read it and you think, wow, that's pretty impressive. But that's not the response that it mentions here. In chapter 43, verse 10, he says to Ezekiel, tells him, "Describe the temple of the house of Israel so that they will be ashamed of their sins and measure the pattern." That was God's purpose. It wasn't describe this temple so that they'll go, wow, it's really cool, Lord. He said, describe it to them so that they will be ashamed of their sin. And I think some of what was happening there was these old guys that would hear Ezekiel's description, some of them saw the old temple before it got crushed and burned down. And they knew why that happened. It was because of their sin. It reminded them of their sinfulness. So when he described all the grandeur, it reminded them of their sinfulness and why it had to be rebuilt. A prayer for us could be, "Well, Lord, describe my state to me so that I will be ashamed of my sin and repent from it, accept God's forgiveness, and carry on in humbleness from there." This t-shirt, we could change the wording on there a little bit. Instead of real people, real life, real hope, we could be saying real sinners, real life, real hope. Because that really is the message that God works with. God works with real sinners, giving you a story to tell with your life and to tell the hope of Jesus Christ that you can pass on to others. So I will leave it at that and grab some material at the back afterwards. And thank you very much for your involvement in our lives as a family.